So something occurred to me recently. So, my mom and I are working our way through Once Upon a Time, and of course, one of the big pieces in Once Upon a Time is, of course, the curse, the dark curse that gets used multiple times throughout the course of the series by Regina multiple times, by, Peter Pan, by, Hook technically via, the Dark One setup. And I'm also, my dad watched WandaVision recently to get ready to go see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And, at the end of that, I'm sitting there, because I kind of watched the last episode with him, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, there's a similarity here between what Regina does, what, the evil queen, Regina Mills, what she does with the Dark Curse and some of her reasoning in it, and what Wanda does with her Hex in WandaVision. And I'm doing this at this point in time because I just saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or at the time that I'm recording this video, I just saw it. And I wanted to wait until I saw Doctor Strange 2 before I did this video in case there was something else that happened with Wanda, something else that was shown with Wanda that would apply to this just comparison that I wanted to make between the Hex and the Curse. And there is, and I'm going to try really hard to avoid spoilers, and I'm probably going to talk about some of the stuff that ends up being spoilery for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness in regards to Wanda near the end of the video. So I will try to at least, mark that before I get into spoiler territory. Because I don't like spoiling things for people, and it was hard enough trying to avoid spoilers for this movie anyway. So I've got my Wanda shirt up there, I've got Wanda and Vision, and then this is a twisted kind of version of Snow White shirt that you can't see super well, but it's like a twisted version of Snow White with a bunch of poisoned apples and everything. Because I don't have a shirt that has, the evil queen on it. So I just kind of wanted to go through some of the similarities that I noticed between the Hex and the Curse, and then some of the differences, obviously, that we see between the two of them, but also in regards to how they both kind of change as characters throughout the course of, Once Upon a Time, but also with Wanda through what we've seen, mostly through WandaVision and into, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but also for her, it's, of course, compounding on things that happened in, of course, Infinity War, and in Endgame, and in Civil War, and in Age of Ultron, and, all that stuff that we see. And, see throughout Wanda's past and everything. And, of course, for Regina in, Once Upon a Time, we get all these different flashbacks that, you can, piece together, Regina's life, her timeline throughout the course of Once Upon a Time, and the dog is at the door. So one moment. Up. Puppy. I know you're a puppy. Are you gonna help with the video? No, you can't have window yet. It's too hot. And so I just kind of wanted to go through some of those similarities and differences that we see between Wanda and Regina, but also just in regards to how they're kind of similar as characters to a degree. Now, there's not a direct line, although I will say it's not a spoiler for WandaVision by any means, but there's a moment in WandaVision in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Not a spoiler by any means, but you do see some clips from Snow White, as in the original, as in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You see that playing in the background at some point in time. Not going to tell you where, not going to tell you the context of it, because that kind of spoilers part of it, but I'm not going to do that. But you see that in the background, and I'm just now I'm just sitting here going it's not Once Upon a Time you see playing in the background. That would have very much implied this theory, would have been very helpful, but no. But also to a degree in regards to, Avengers is, Marvel Studios is now delving into, of course, the multiverse stuff with what happened with, Spider-Man and No Way Home, and with, now with, Multiverse of Madness and everything. And in Once Upon a Time, they do delve into the multiverse theory, because it's not only these different, there's the fairy tale book that of course all the main characters come from, but then there's other books, like Frankenstein is a different book, and then there's another reality that's another version of these tales of the story of, the storybook tales, and, there's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and there's, all these other different, realms and everything like that, and like alternate versions of characters that we do see throughout Once Upon a Time. So I just kind of found that interesting that I throw that in here. So just to go over some of these, in regards to like the Dark Curse, that of course is what Regina casts. It is this extremely powerful Dark Curse that was created by Rumpelstiltskin in order for him to be able to travel to a world without magic, because that's of course he wanted to get to his son, Balefire. A whole section of the entire series is dedicated to this, with him being manipulative in the background, and of course we see him kind of basically grooming Regina in order to cast this curse. In regards to, Regina is eventually, Rumpel gets Regina to the point where she will cast this curse. And part of casting the curse, is that the one who is casting it has to crush the heart of the thing they love most. And in regards to this, that's why Rumpel couldn't perform the curse himself, because A, the thing he loves most is his son, and B, he wouldn't have to cast the curse if he had his son with him, and he wouldn't do that anyway. Part of also what you see throughout Once Upon a Time is just like the different forms of like loves that parents have for their children. Different parents doing what they feel is right to protect their child, even though it may not be in the child's actual best interest in various points. That's a big part of Once Upon a Time as well, from different perspectives. And like, they have the good guys that are flawed, of course, the heroes that are flawed, and of course they have the villains that are, have heroic moments, and of course for several of the villains, get redeemed throughout the course of the series, and we see them change and get, better and turn into, better people and become heroes by the end of it, for several of the villains. And of course, even some of the other villains get like their own little redemption arc. And then there's just ones that are just like, no, you're not going to get a redemption arc for this character because there is no redeeming this character. But what we see for Regina is that, Rumpel explains for us as well, you have to crush the heart of the thing you love most. And her initial sacrifice to the curse had been like the heart of her, like her favorite riding horse that she had when she was, growing up and everything, that she'd adored this horse and everything, and she crushed its heart, and this curse didn't work. And Rumpel explains that it can't just be something you love. It has to be the thing you love most, the person you love most. And Regina ends up figuring out that the way to cast said curse is she has to crush the heart of her father. And of course, because, throughout what we see, of course, throughout the course of a lot of Regina's flashbacks is her father there, being very caring for her, being very subservient and, obedient to her mother, but, being this constant in her life that just wants to, he tries to make her not want to go after Snow White. He tries to do all this other stuff, but he does love her, and he is the one that she loves the most at that time. And her father's name is Henry, which, if you know anything about Once Upon a Time, Henry is also the name of her son later on. But what happens is she ripped her father's heart out of his chest, and then she sacrifices his heart, in order to cast the Dark Curse. And then that sends, all of her, her and, a population of the Enchanted Forest into, what would become Storybrooke. Sets them up there and gives them all these fake memories and everything, and sets her up with being like the mayor, the one that's in charge of Storybrooke and everything. And that's how that curse works. Depending on like the world, or depending on the person who casts the curse, it can be a little bit different. We see later on a different version of the curse that would have put like Peter Pan in charge of everyone. Another version is Snow White actually has to sacrifice the heart of her Prince Charming in order to then send them back into, Storybrooke world and everything. And there's like several other times throughout the course of the series that the curse is cast by various people and have like different alterations to the curse when it's, put in place. In regards to with Wanda, with her hex that we see in WandaVision, of course, we see that her hex is created out of this extreme grief. And I will go over the similarities with this, but we see as her hex is created out of this extreme amount of grief that she feels. And in regards to losing Vision, and, you know, on top of that, lost her brother. On top of that, you know, everything happened with the Avengers and all of that. And I'll go a little bit more into that into detail in a moment. But the way that the way that her hex was designed was to, you know, trap Westview, and to then, you know, put them all into, you know, her having what she kind of thought of this, you know, sitcom-y life and everything. And, as much as I'm a fan of Dick Van Dyke and, you know, all those other, you know, the sitcoms that they, you know, reference throughout there with Dick Van Dyke, with Bewitched and everything, you know, Brady Bunch, you know, going through that time frame that they show that, you know, we see in the progression of the episodes and everything, you know, there's a lot that comes into that, but, you know, I love those dynamics in the show, but, you know, she, you know, did this in regards to, you know, creating what she thought was this perfect little world. And, you know, and intentionally it was not something she intended to do, which I will go over. But that's kind of what happens with the hex. And like it's explained later on by Agatha, you know, it was Agatha all along. It's explained later by Agatha that the way that the hex is designed is that for Wanda, it was to set up this perfect little world for her to be in. And, you know, regardless of kind of like who she kind of had to like manipulate in order to get it, to have her, you know, to have Vision and to, you know, and then later on have her children. And then, you know, we see that and everything. And of course, Wanda, of course, you know, at the end of the series, you know, she, you know, destroys the hex and everything, which, you know, I'll go over. But I just, you know, those are the two basic things, the Dark Curse and the hex. Now, going into the similarities that I did want to point out between the Dark Curse and the hex, or in regards to similarities between Wanda and Regina as to why they did these. Both of them performed these acts out of the point of out of heartbreak, out of loss, out of grief. And for Regina, it was out of her loss, her love for her first love, her first, you know, the man that she was in love with first when she was, you know, very young, when she was a teenager, Daniel, who had been the stable boy, and then she, you know, she wanted to run away with him, and her mother found out because, well, it's explained in the show that, you know, Regina had been kind of set up to marry the king, and this was Snow White's, you know, father at the time, and Snow White was like a young girl, like 10 years old, less than that or whatever at the time, and, you know, she had seen Regina with Daniel, and she was like angry that she didn't think, you know, that Regina was like, didn't love her father, and like, you know, Regina explained to young Snow that it was just like, no, and this is like when we see Snow and Regina actually getting along at that point in time, you know, when they're before everything happens. But you know, Regina explains that, you know, no, I love Daniel, it's not that your father's not a nice man, I'm not in love with him, but I'm in love with Daniel. And, you know, Snow was like, oh, well then I think that you should be with Daniel. And then unfortunately Regina's mother ends up manipulating Snow into telling her what happened, to telling her about, you know, Regina and Daniel. And then Regina's mother, Cora, goes and rips out Daniel's heart right in front of Regina and then crushes it, killing Daniel. Yeah, right in front of young Regina. And then Regina ends up finding out that Snow told her mother, told Cora about what happened, and she just, like, for the rest of the time that they're in the Enchanted Forest, and for a good part of the time when they're, you know, first awakened from the curse in Storybrooke and everything, you know, Regina is just, she's just hell-bent on getting her revenge on Snow White. You know, spent, you know, years and years and years, you know, pretending to be Snow White's, you know, loving stepmother, and then as soon as Regina, you know, as soon as Snow's father was dead, she becomes this, you know, manipulative, horrible, wicked queen, evil queen, and, you know, reigns over the forest and has an amazing wardrobe, because I love Regina's wardrobe throughout, whenever she's the wicked queen. Oh God, when she's the evil queen, oh God, I love Regina's wardrobe. I just want to do an entire video just like Regina's wardrobe, like just all the different amazing outfits we see her in throughout the course of the series. That might be something I do at some point, but I don't know yet. But I love her. I love her costumes when she's the evil queen. She looks amazing. But what we see is, of course, she spends these years just, trying to get her revenge on Snow White, because she just can't seem to forgive Snow White, even though, because Regina just, she's manipulated by her mother, she's manipulated by Rumple, she's, forced down all these different alleys, and she's, kind of made to choose the wrong choice every single time. And anytime that she is given the chance to try to choose the right choice, she kind of fails. She kind of chickens out. And eventually later on, after the curse, after she gets to know Emma and like all this other stuff that of course happens throughout the series, she gets better. And eventually she is able to forgive Snow. And eventually they do have this much better relationship. Not really, mother-daughter, stepmother-stepdaughter relationship, but more friends and more confidants and more this understanding that they have between each other. And I do love that they show that throughout the course of the series, and they just show the evolution of their relationship. In regards to Wanda, of course, for the way that her loss is described in this, her broken heart is, of course, she loses Vision twice right in front of her. Once, of course, when she's, the one that has to, destroy the soul, the Mind Stone that's inside of his head, in Infinity War, she has to destroy that, right when they're getting to the point where they're having their actual relationship and everything, and she has to be the one that destroys it because she's the only one that can. And she succeeds, and she thinks for a moment that maybe they've defeated Thanos. Maybe they've, thwarted, I can't say the word. Maybe they've stopped Thanos. And it's, Thanos just shows up, uses the Time Stone, reverses time, brings Vision back, repairs the Mind Stone, and then just rips it out of Vision's head right in front of Wanda. Vision laying on the ground, and then Wanda just gets snapped away. Thanos just snaps her away. And then, when she comes back, the first thing she literally does is she goes and, after all the portals open up, which is just that scene alone in Endgame is just one of my favorite moments in all of cinematic history. Just like that moment alone with like all the portals opening, everybody stepping out, and, you just see this determination on, everybody's faces. But back to the story. But, Wanda comes out, and of course she looks at Thanos, and it's just like, you took everything from me. I don't even know who you are. That moment with Thanos, of course, and, Wanda is almost able to defeat Thanos then and there when she fights him, but of course he cheats. And of course, at the end of that, by the time, everything's finished with, with what happens with, defeating Thanos and, with Tony's funeral and everything. And, she doesn't get Vision back, and she ends up going, and we find out throughout the kind of the flashback sequence that we get during, WandaVision, that she like went to the research facility where Vision's body was. And, they had tried to make it look like she stole Vision's body, but she didn't. She didn't actually steal it. And she went and she found Westview, which was where, like, Vision had, like, thought of, like, them going, and, like, he bought, like, this plot of land for them and everything. And we see this, and we see her just, like, driving through the town and seeing just, like, how sad everybody looks. Because, like, for them, this is, 5 years ago, they possibly just, like, lost someone that they loved very much, right in front of them, getting snapped away. Or they came back from the snap, and either the person that didn't get snapped away possibly died. We know that happened for several characters, where someone, died during the, the 5-year blip, and, or like they came back and like the person that they had been with, like, moved on and like married someone else or something. It's just like, all these people that are just kind of lost and don't know what to do. And, Wanda, finds the plot of land that Vision had, picked out for them. And we watch in the sequence as just like all of this chaos magic that she has inside of her. And Wanda says, I don't know how I did it. I only remember feeling completely alone, empty. Endless nothingness. And I will admit, I have not dealt with the extreme version of depression that I know a lot of other people have. I'm glad I haven't. I wish nobody ever had to deal with that. But I do know what it is like at times to feel like nothing's going right. And I know that there's, millions of other people out there that have felt this on a much bigger scale than I have for multiple reasons and for much longer periods of time than I ever did. And for Wanda, that is the catalyst for her, for her power coming out, for her, for it making the hex around Westview and everything, like giving her Vision back. It like literally forms this new version of Vision out of her power. And we watch this happen, and like I don't remember which episode it is, but we see this happen, and like you just this grief, this emptiness, this pain that she's felt, and you just it's just so hard to, like, you can't, it's like it's hard to be angry at her for what she did, for why she did it, but you also see that it's not like the right way of dealing with your grief. Other ways that the curse and the hex are similar is that they also pull others into the curse or into the hex. For Regina, of course, it's, these huge groups within, the Enchanted Forest, and other times down the line, it's other groups within other areas, that get pulled into the curse one way or the other. It gives everybody that was pulled into the curse all these new memories and everything of, like, these new identities. Regina is now, like, Regina Mills, the mayor. Rumpelstiltskin is now Mr. Gold. For, Snow White, she's, Mary Margaret Blanchard. For, all these other different characters, they're now these, like, new version of this character. This new identity that they didn't have before. That's just this, like, cursed selves, as they're referred to as. And, of course, later on, when they get their memories back, from the Enchanted Forest, they now have, like, two sets of memories, because it's like they still have all this knowledge of, like, how to deal with, like, the modern world and everything, but they also still remember all their skills from, like, the dwarves still remember how to, use their axes and everything, and their pickaxes, and later on, Ruby is able to turn into the wolf again and everything. Like, we see all of this stuff happen. And, in regards to the hex, it's everybody in Westview that gets pulled in. And then, anybody that gets pulled into the hex themselves that gets shifted into this mindset of, I'm this character within this sitcom, within this world that Wanda has created. And for Wanda, of course, the creating the hex in the first place was not intentional, whereas with Regina setting the curse, it was very intentional. For Wanda, it's all of her grief came out and it formed this hex. And she just, as I said, she doesn't remember forming the hex in the first place. It takes her a while to realize what happened. And then by the time she does realize what happened, she can't really take it back. She doesn't want to, because she's happy. And, like, she even says to the townspeople when her and Agatha end up out there, when, Agatha, like, releases all of them from, like, their, as Agatha puts it, they're just your meat puppets. I just cut their strings. And, they're all just, like, all the townspeople within Westview are just angry at Wanda. Not that I blame them. Because, like, even when, like, everybody got their memories back in Once Upon a Time, they were all angry at Regina. Again, I don't blame them. She took them out of their homes, out of their lives, out of their happy lives that they had in the Enchanted Forest. Well, happy for some of them. And then put them into this place, and they're all under, like, a new version of a curse where they can't actually be with the person that they want to be with. Or they can't actually, be with the child that is actually theirs, because the curse has, like, mixed everything up. And it won't change until Emma shows up. Until the Savior shows up. And, we see a lot of this happen and then throughout the course of Once Upon a Time. But in the Hex, in regards to Wanda, we see these moments where, the curse kind of bleeds through, or not the curse, where, like, the person's real personality kind of bleeds through. Well, there's, like, you can't really leave, or, all these other things that happen. And, I don't blame the people for being angry at Wanda. And it's even stated later by, not Geraldine, Monica, by Monica Rambeau, that, you know, they won't know what you sacrificed in regards to this. You know, in regards to, you know, at the end of the Hex, which I will go over. But, you know, we see these moments for, you know, with Wanda, with like interacting with the characters, and she does eventually like free them from the Hex, of course. Free the town and everybody from the Hex. The other thing that I do point out that is similar between Regina and Wanda is in regards to their children. With Regina, partway through the curse, she ends up adopting Henry. And, you know, she does not know that Henry is the child of the woman who is actually the savior and everything. And, you know, it's, you know, Mr. Gold is the one that found him and everything. And, you know, she adopts him and, you know, names him after her father, names him Henry. Henry Daniel Mills is actually his name. So he's named after, you know, the two men that Regina has loved the most in her life, in regards to, you know, Henry in regards to her father, and of course Daniel in regards to her first love. And, you know, we see the way that, you know, we see how protective Regina is, of course, of Henry throughout the course of the series. And part of the reason that Regina changes throughout the course of the series is because of Henry. You know, because she wants to be good for him. She wants to become this better person that Henry will be proud of. And, you know, we see the relationship goes through up and down, where Henry wants nothing to do with her, and she tries to get better, and she tries to win him back, but it doesn't work, and, you know, all this other stuff. And, you know, Regina, of course, does get better and better and become actually a good person and a hero throughout the course of the, you know, throughout the course of the series. That's one of the very large story arcs that we see for her throughout the series, and for several of the villains, particularly Rumple, but also, Maleficent is also there as well, and there's a few other villains, of course, that we see that go through this arc of going from, you know, being this horrible villain, and like we see the moments in their past that like turn them into this villain, and then turning from a villain into slowly but into a hero. Same thing with like Captain Hook and a few other ones that are villains that show up throughout the series. And then there's just some of the villains that just, they don't get redeemed, or just throughout the course of what we see in the series, they're not able to be redeemed for various reasons. Or in some cases, they get redeemed twice. Like same thing with like Regina's sister, Zelena, you know, the you know, the Wicked Witch of the West. You know, that same thing happens with her, where she is redeemed again because of her own child. But what we see, of course, for, you know, Regina, Henry is that catalyst for her to get better. And in regards to Wanda, it is, of course, she has Tommy and Billy. Her and Vision, of course, during, you know, part of the Hex, they have these two boys. They have these twin boys that grow up, you know. Billy is someone that has Wanda's powers, have like, you know, magic chaos powers, kind of the way that she does, and then Tommy has like the speed, like her brother Quicksilver. Also compounding on top of everything that happened with, you know, Vision, Wanda also has to, you know, she also lost, you know, Quicksilver in Age of Ultron, and before that she'd lost her parents, and of course her and her brother were, of course, experimented on by Hydra and everything. So, you know, there's like this compounding thing that happens with her in regards to, you know, how her psyche is affected and everything over time. You know, and, you know, she has Billy and Tommy, you know, because of the curse, and, you know, she loves them like they're her own, because they are her own, which is going off of what happens in the comics, of course, where Billy and Tommy are these, you know, twins that her and Vision have in like this alternate reality. Just go read House of M. It explains a bunch of it. These children that she has in House of M. And eventually she does, you know, they get, you know, they go away, but then those souls for Billy and Tommy end up getting, you know, kind of put into like these two other newborn children, these newborn boys somewhere, and then eventually they still develop the same powers and everything, you know, once, you know, they're both mutants and everything, and eventually they do find their mother in the comics. And of course, throughout the course of, and I'm not gonna, you know, bits of, slight spoilers here for Doctor Strange, but I'm pretty sure this is stuff that's been in the trailers. She's trying to find her children within the multiverse. That is what Wanda is trying to do throughout the course of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. She's trying to find her children, trying to find a Billy and Tommy that she can have with her, regardless of the cost. I'm going to try to not do too much in regards to like what spoilers are for Multiverse of Madness. So I'll try to avoid those as much as possible. But she is literally a woman on a mission, and I kind of will compare it to a bear. A mother bear whose cub is in danger, or a mother anything whose cub is in danger at the time. They will fight to the death to protect their child. They will do whatever it takes to protect said child. It's like the whole thing of like, there are some others, it's like, screw whatever you want. I'd go to war to protect my child, or like I'd walk through fire to protect my child, or, whatever, in order to protect my child, to get to my child, to make sure that my child is safe. And that's kind of what Wanda's doing in Multiverse of Madness, but it's also, maybe not the most logical thing to do. Yeah, maybe not. And of course, Wanda has another quote in, I think it's the, I don't remember if it's the 4th or the 5th episode from WandaVision. I want to say it's like the 5th episode, whatever. It's like, look, we've all been there, right? Letting our fear and anger get the better of us, and intentionally expanding the borders of the false world we created. The Modern Family parody episode. And, there's that whole concept that goes into that. But the other quote that I did want to point out that kind of goes along with that, and it's a quote from Vision. And who is this, in the world of WandaVision, is this creation that she made. He's not the real Vision. But, he says, what is grief, if not love persevering? All of us throughout our lives have lost people we've loved. Family, friends, pets, and, very recently in the country, there's been several mass shootings. And I'd probably bet a fair amount that there are parents or people who lost someone in one of those shootings, or just any shooting, or just any reason that they lost someone. That, that there's a limit to what they would do to get their child back, or get that person back. But that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be ones that would go way down that limit in order to get that. Push that envelope as far as it'll go in order to get their child back. And to a degree, I wouldn't blame them in the slightest. Child, niece, nephew, cousin. Okay. But the other thing that I did want to point out that is a similarity between Wanda and Regina in regards to, the Hex and the Curse is that, yes, at some point during the Curse or during the Hex, they both have to give up something. For Regina, she had to give up her father in order to create the to create the Curse. And at one point she had preserved Daniel's body when he died, and she ended up, he kind of gets turned into like a Frankenstein-like monster by Dr. Frankenstein because of reasons. And he kind of, he's not the same. He's not the Daniel that she remembered. He's this monster. And she has to destroy him because he's actually like trying to attack Henry, and she has to, destroy him. And there's this moment where like the real Daniel like bleeds through, and he's just like, just end it, just make it stop. Just let me rest type of a thing. And, she has to destroy him. And of course, with the Hex from Wanda, she has to, you know, when she's, you know, bringing the Hex back in from around, you know, Westview, you know, she says goodbye to her boys, and then she has to say goodbye to Vision. And, you know, she loses him again, right in front of her eyes. And, you know, she takes the dark hole with her, and she goes and she just spends however many months it is between the end of WandaVision and what happens in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And she just studies and studies and studies in order to do what she needs to try to get back to her boys. And Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is a very good, you know, shows what she's willing to do. I'm not going to go into spoilers in regards to what happens in Doctor Strange, because I don't know exactly how many people have watched Doctor Strange and seen, you know, and then watch this or whatever. Although, given the numbers that my channel gets at the moment, at whatever point in time you do see this, you'll probably have seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but I'd still like to avoid spoilers for anyone that just hasn't seen it and watches this video first. But I just that whole concept of, like, for Wanda, it's like, how far will she go to get to her children? What will she sacrifice in order to get to her children? And for Regina, she goes through, you know, all this stuff, all the different seasons of Once Upon a Time. She goes from being this villain to being this, you know, kind of anti-villain into being like a hero. And at the end of the series, and the end of the series is a little bit rushed, I will admit that. The last bit of the last season gets a little bit rushed. I wish they could have done another season just to kind of, you know, explain everything a little bit better. But at the end of that season, she does this thing where she's finally fully understood the curse. She's seen it cast enough times. She's cast it herself enough. She's, you know, been able to study the curse enough that she's figured out the best way for this curse to actually work where it is not a curse. And basically the result of that is she tells, she tells Henry, and she tells her sisters, tells Zelena, that I know how to make this work to the point where everyone can all be together. And it's not sacrificing the heart of someone you love most. It's using a little piece of everybody else's hearts, including your own, in order to make this, you know, make not a curse, but this sanctuary where, like, all of these other realms, where, like, all of these different kingdoms that were, like, part of the Enchanted Forest and, you know, Wonderland and, like, all these other places, where they all end up together in one place, surrounded by magic, where magic still exists, and where by the end of it, Regina is crowned queen. Good Queen Regina, where she is crowned by David and Snow, which just adds to that. With Henry there, with Zelena there, with, you know, Emma and Hook there, showing their support, with, like, all these other people that we've seen, showing their support to Regina, that you have become this queen that you were meant to be. Because one of the things that Regina's mother, Cora, says when we see Regina born is that, you know, her name was Regina, and, you know, one day, you know, she will rule. And Cora wasn't wrong. It just took a lot longer and a much more roundabout way for Regina to become this queen that she was meant to be. And for Wanda, we see her become the Scarlet Witch at the end of WandaVision. You know, she, you know, has full access to her power in regards to being able to, you know, learn the dark hole and, like, learn all this other magic. And throughout the course of, you know, Doctor Strange, we see her perform, you know, these amazing magical, you know, spells and everything that she's been working on. Doesn't go into spoilers, but we see her use power, because you see her use magic throughout the course of the trailers. But we see that, and it was just this very interesting comparison that I thought of between the two characters, between Regina and Wanda. And, you know, I just wanted to point that out. I wanted to make a video about it. I did not intend for it to be this long, but I'm still okay with that. So that's what we have. I thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.